I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love.
You're going to have a Thanksgiving lesson today. It will be a little bit different. One of the things that always interests me is, what do people think? And not just believers, but all kinds of people. What do they think? And so what do people think about Thanksgiving? What are they thankful for? Now, we have our Wednesday night Thanksgiving service where people stand up and say, I'm thankful for this, and that's a nice service. But just in general, what are people thankful for? I came across a gratitude challenge on Facebook where basically people on Facebook challenge their friends and say, over the next 10 days, each of the 10 days, list something that you're thankful for. So it's not a list of, here are 10 things, rank them. I list this first, this second, or here are 100 things, pick 10 off this list. It's just whatever you think. It's wide open. And so therefore it's really hard to gather data, but Facebook gathered all this information and they produced a summary of the results. And here are the top 10 things that people listed for which they were thankful. And you'll see some overlap and similarities and all that, but the dark blue are basically family and friends. So 5 of the top 10 things listed basically were family and friends out of the thousands of things that were listed. Look beyond family and friends, as you would expect that to be a fairly high priority on most people's list. The other things are health, job, roof over my head, life, and music.
Notice children are not listed much higher than music.
I saw that, yeah.
And you can probably think of some reasons why. In general, if you just look at the list, does anything strike you about the list?
Gerald, no spiritual blessing?
Ah, yes. It's kind of selfish, isn't it? It's really self-focused. It's about me. Well, that's a problem. Well, let's look at some questions. And again, this may seem a little strange to start with fasting if we're going to talk about Thanksgiving, but if you're getting ready for Thursday, you might want to have a little fast ahead of time to get ready for it. Fasting, as you're going to see, plays a big part of this lesson today, so I want to bring it in here at the beginning. Why do people fast? Well, let's break it up into parts. Why do unbelievers fast? Somebody who has no religious belief, why would they fast? Because they do fast on occasion, don't they?
For health reasons.
For health reasons, right. Lose weight, right, which might be related to health. But yes, people will do that. What about believers? Do they ever fast just to lose weight or for health reasons? Sure. Why else do believers fast?
Change your priorities.
To help change priorities. How will the fast help in doing that?
Putting down the flesh.
So we're putting down the flesh, and that helps us in changing our priorities because we're taking the focus off ourselves, denying ourselves, aren't we? If we're going to fast, then we're going to deny ourselves food. And so it allows us to focus on something beyond ourselves and to focus upon God and our relationship with Him and other things like that. You've seen many ads on TV about starving children around the world. But why do people ignore the pleas?
Not sure where the money's actually going.
Okay, may not be sure where the money is actually going, but can we find out that fairly easily? I mean, that information is available if we want to know. Take any charity and you can find out how the money is used. You can find out all kinds of things about that charity very quickly on the internet.
Gerald, I think the need just seems so overwhelming sometimes, and we hope that somebody else is...
Yeah, when you look at all the needs around us, in particular you look at billions of starving children around the world, that's a lot of kids. That's an overwhelming thing. What can I do, right? What can I do? I like the quote of Reagan I have on that picture with a dog riding on the horse's back. Everybody can do something. But sometimes we're so overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem that we don't do anything. What about water? Over 2 billion people in the world do not have toilets. 2 billion people in the world do not have toilets. I mean, there's no running water. In many places, to find a mud puddle, you've got water, and that's your water. We hear some pleas along this line, but not very many. We had somebody in our church who was with a clean water group, that was a mission group that dug wells for people in these areas. But in general, we don't hear much about this, do we? Why do we have such a problem identifying with this lack of water? Not a problem for us, is it? Walk over and turn the tap on. But in general, it's easy for us, isn't it? We don't have an issue with that. We have a hard time identifying with the fact that people don't have running water. They can't just go over and get a drink anytime they want a drink of water. So we're not really very interested. Why do we find it so hard to pay attention to strangers? Don't answer this out loud, but have you ever walked down the street where there's a homeless person on the sidewalk and you're very careful to look away? You're not going to look him in the eye. That's what we do, isn't it? There's a stranger there that we don't want to have anything to do with, and so we don't make eye contact. We just go on by. So why do we pay so little attention to strangers? Why is that? Not for you particularly now, but for people in general. Why do they ignore strangers, not have anything to do with strangers?
Fear.
Fear? There is some fear involved, isn't there? Because you're not sure what you're getting into when you deal with that person. There could be a threat involved in that, so we're sometimes afraid. If I pay attention, then I may be asked to help. I may feel compelled to help that individual. And then what are they going to do with the money? Even in church. Have you ever been to a church where you're a visitor and you walk in and when you just look at the people around, it looks like a friendly church because everybody's laughing and getting along with one another and having a good time, but they don't pay no attention to you. It's as if you don't exist. I would bet that probably most of us have had some experience along that line. But why does that happen in church? Could it happen here? I would bet that it probably has happened here. I know that some work pretty hard to make sure that it doesn't happen. But
My wife introduced herself to some visitors, and it turned out they were members.
yes. All right. Now.
They sit on the other side.
Okay. Yes. That has happened to her. It's happened to me. It's probably happened to many of us, where we've introduced ourselves to someone and, oh yeah, I've been a member here for 2 years or 3 years. But we're big enough now where that can happen. And particularly when you run 2 services, it's even easier for it to happen. And like you say, we have 2 sides, and people tend to sit in the same area. On occasion, people move around, and when they do, they see new faces. Introducing yourself to someone who has been a member for 3 years is not necessarily a bad thing, is it? That's not a harmful thing. And if someone who's been here for 3 or 4 or 5 years would come up and introduce themselves, I would not feel offended by that. I would be a little bit ashamed that I hadn't been up to them. One of the things that we don't want to admit to is that many times, we have our little circles and we're greeting our friends and making sure that we have met our friends and recognizing that they're there and all that. And so we are so involved with that we may see a new face and be too busy, or we just don't even notice the new face. What about visiting the sick? Why is it so difficult to visit the sick? Now, it must be difficult because there's not a whole lot of it going on.
When people are sick, I know sometimes I don't want anybody coming around.
And when we recognize that that person really doesn't care to have somebody coming by to visit with, then we can recognize that and still let them know that we care about them without bothering them when they don't want to be bothered. But that's not the only reason, is it? Because there are lots of people who get sick and there may be very little visiting that takes place. Why else don't we visit with the sick? Why do people in general not visit with the sick?
Be afraid they'll have to do something.
There might be because you make that offer, call on me if you ever want anything, if you ever need it. Well, they might do it. Oh, no. We're busy, aren't we, with things that are important to us. And this can be a bother, can't it? Kind of gets in the way of doing the things that I want to do. What about visiting prisoners? There are people in this church who have visited prisoners. I know that. But in general, if you look at the church population, you can probably count on one hand the number of people that have visited a prison. The other sad part of that is that probably everybody in here has had a family member in prison at some point in time and probably didn't even visit them. So why do people have so little interest in visiting a prisoner?
Probably afraid when they get out, they're going to show up on their doorstep.
All right, that's one, yeah. And again, getting in the way of me living my life the way that I want to live my life. I mean, these are bad people, aren't they? They've done bad things, and they're being punished for the bad things that they've done. I don't want to be associated with that. They're just getting what they deserve, so I'll let them have it. Just some things for us to think about this morning, about our attitudes toward things. The next one, how do we prove that we're thankful for our blessings? We're all going to sit around on Thursday, and depending upon how your family handles these things, and we're for Thanksgiving, and we may go around the table and everyone say what they're thankful for. How do you show that you indeed are thankful for the blessings that you have? Does your life reflect that you are indeed thankful for the blessings you receive? Does it provide the evidence? Does it prove that you are thankful?
Share and follow up on what you say you're going to do.
Big step, isn't it? Again, nice words, but putting into action, that's the hard part, isn't it? I have a film clip this morning from the TV show Seinfeld. This is the final episode. For those of you who are Seinfeld fans, you'll remember this one. In this last episode, Jerry and George have had their TV show that they've written, titled Jerry, accepted by NBC. NBC is going to produce the show. And they have to go to Hollywood next week to start putting this show together. And so NBC has told them that to celebrate this, we're going to give you the corporate jet for a week, and you can go wherever you want to go, do whatever you want to do. And so the four of them agree that they're going to go to Paris. So they get on the corporate jet to fly to Paris, and there's an incident on the plane, and so they're forced to land, leaving New York to fly to Paris. They're forced to land in Latham, Massachusetts. And so the clip I'm going to show you picks up where they're in Latham and they get arrested. And we're going to show the arrest. We're going to show the first few minutes in jail where they learn about the reason for the arrest. And then I'm going to show, for the last part of the clip, the district attorney's opening argument for the prosecution of these four for the crime that they have committed.
Well, what are we going to do about Paris? I mean, are we actually going to get back on this plane?
I say we go back to New York and take a regular flight.
Okay.
I'm not getting on a regular plane now. I'm all psyched up to go on a private jet. No way I'm getting on a regular plane.
Well, I'm sure that they would fly us first class.
First class doesn't make it anymore. All right, Fatso, out of the car. I'm going to capture this. Come on! Give me your wallet. Don't shoot.
Well, there goes the money for the lipo.
See, the great thing about robbing a fat guy is it's an easy getaway, They can't really chase you.
It's actually doing him a favor. It's less money for him to buy food. What you want? Come on! Come on, come on!
That's a shame. Come on, let's get something to eat here in Sticksville.
All right. Hold her right there.
What?
You're under arrest.
Under arrest? What for?
Article 223-7 of the Latham County Penal Code.
What? No, we didn't do anything.
That's exactly right. The law requires you to help or assist anyone in danger as long as it's reasonable to do so.
I never heard of that.
It's new. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. Let's go.
Good Samaritan law? Are they crazy?
Why would we want to help somebody?
I know.
That's what nuns and Red Cross workers are for.
Now, this group from New York, not only ignored, but as we will prove, they actually mocked the victim as he was being robbed at gunpoint. I can guarantee you one other thing, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the first time they have behaved in this manner. On the contrary, they have quite a record of mocking and maligning. This is a history of selfishness, self-absorption, immaturity, and greed.
When George said, "Why would I help somebody?" What did he say right after that? That's right. That's what nuns and Red Cross are for, right? Somebody else do it. We have other people who will take care of somebody else. I don't need to do that. Now, we do that on occasion, too. When we ignore something that needs some attention, then we take the position, well, somebody else will take care of that. I don't need to do that. And then the district attorney makes the claim here, this is a history of selfishness, self-absorption, self-centeredness. And then what they do in the trial is they bring back some characters over the 9 seasons and review some of the things that these 4 did in dealing with these individuals. And what you see throughout is that, in fact, it was selfishness on their part. And from all that, one of the conclusions that I've reached about the whole show, one of the reasons that so many of us liked that series, because I would bet most of us have watched a lot of that series, if not all of it, all 9 seasons. And one of the reasons that people tend to like it so much is because we're a lot like that. And the show treated it lightheartedly, treated the selfishness and the self-centeredness in a lighthearted manner, like it's okay. And so we felt better about ourselves and being self-centered and selfish by seeing the show. And maybe you didn't feel that way about the show, but I suspect that a lot of people did for that reason. Before we get to the story, I want to go back to Isaiah chapter 58, because Isaiah 58 is about fasting. In the beginning, in verse 1, God says to Isaiah, proclaim to Israel their fault, their problem. And then in verse 2, he says something very interesting about the people themselves. He says, they seek me daily and delight to know my ways. It doesn't sound at first like he's describing people that he's about to chastise. Don't you want him to say about you, she seeks me daily and delights to know my ways? Isn't that what you want to hear? They delight to draw near to God? What good people! And he's about to chastise them. In verse 3, he says, they ask a question. The question they ask of me is, why have we fasted and you don't see it? You don't recognize it. You don't give me credit. You don't give me enough credit for this wonderful act that I'm performing on your behalf. Sometimes we might have that feeling about our worship or our service in various ways, and maybe we're just not getting quite enough credit from God for what we're doing for Him. And God's going to now tell them about fasting. He says, you think it's just denying yourself some food. He said, here is a real fast. Share your bread with the hungry. Don't just pass on it. Share it with people who need it. Not the view of fasting that I have held. Share your bread with the hungry. Bring the homeless into your house. Now, he's not just saying, look the homeless person in the eye or look the homeless person in the eye and give him $20. He's saying, bring the homeless person into your house. This is the fast that I am asking of you. And then cover the naked. Provide clothing to those that need it. Well, again, it doesn't sound much like a Thanksgiving lesson yet, does it? But anyway, we're getting there. Then he summarizes it. He says, for this fast, for a fast that is pleasing to me, pour yourself out for others. Deny yourself, which is what we think we're doing when we fast, the traditional way, denying ourselves. He says, pour yourself out for others, for others. And then your light shall shine in the darkness. And that's similar to what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount when he says, let your light so shine before men that men may see your good works and give glory to the Father. Let your light shine before men so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father, not to you for such a wonderful person as you are, but to the Father. So here's the fast. Here's the good worship. Here's the good way of performing for Him. Feed the hungry. Welcome the homeless into your house. Cover the naked. Sounds similar to what we're going to see in just a moment. We're now ready for the story, the sheep and the goats. Normally the title in the Bibles will be Judgment, Judgment Day or something like that. Because in this, what we have is the separation that takes place. Jesus comes again. He says, when the Son of Man returns, when Jesus comes back with all His angels and He sits on His throne, then all the nations will come before Him and He's going to separate the people. So all the people come before Jesus and He separates them into two groups like a shepherd separates sheep and goats. So He's going to divide the people into two groups, sheep and goats. On the right hand, His sheep, on the left hand, His goats. And to those on His right hand, He says, come, enter the kingdom, inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you from the beginning of time. So to the sheep on the right-hand side, there is this great reward. There is this inheritance that they're now going to receive. And that's the entrance into heaven. Now we know later on that the ones on the left, the goats, are going to get quite a different reward. And that will be hell. But we'll get to that point. So he has this separation that takes place. Why are they getting this inheritance? Jesus says, come, inherit the kingdom, because I was hungry and you gave me food. You did not ignore my plea. You did not ignore me when I was hungry. You gave me food. Now, there are groups, as we've mentioned earlier, that do feed the hungry around the world. And one way for us to participate in that is to support such groups. And we can learn about which ones are good and which ones are not so good. That information is available. I was hungry and you gave me food. He's saying that as we feed others, we are feeding Him. So when we see those hungry, starving children, when we do something about it, then we're doing something for Him. And that's the reason we do it, is only for Him, not to earn anything in the process, but it is for Him. Then he goes on. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. So when we think of the 2 billion people around the world who have no running water, who have no pure water to drink, when we do something about that, and this is, again, another situation where there are organizations that do that. There are several of them that are worthwhile organizations doing good work, digging wells for people in these areas so they have pure water, real water to drink, instead of drinking out of a mud puddle. Most of the deaths of children in the world are actually due to the water, not having pure water to drink. But we can go over and turn on the faucet and it's not a problem for us. We don't know anything about lack of pure water. We have all the water we want. We waste it, right? I mean, it's no problem. Turn the faucet on, leave the room, and come back 2 minutes later. Turn it off. No big deal. More where that came from. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. So as we participate in helping people get pure water to drink, giving the thirsty water, we're quenching His thirst at that time. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. So every time we walk by that stranger, refusing to look him in the eye, whether on the street or in church or wherever it might be, we walk by that stranger, refusing to look at them. Are we walking by Jesus at that moment? Maybe. Would we want to be the person who walks by Jesus? Would we want to be the person who wouldn't give Jesus a piece of bread if he was hungry or a drink of water if he was thirsty? Of course not. But do we do that? I was naked and you clothed me. This is a man who took off his shoes and gave them to this homeless girl. You ever done that? Taking off your shoes to give them to somebody who didn't have shoes? Taking off your coat, give it to somebody who didn't have a coat? If we walk by a person who is cold or doesn't have shoes, are we walking by Jesus? Maybe. I was sick and you visited me. Boy, he's not going to quit here, is he? Hungry, thirsty, stranger, naked, and now sick. I was sick and you visited me. passing on that visit to someone who is sick? Are we passing on that visit with Jesus? Saying, I don't have time for you, Lord. I'm busy with other things. I was in prison and you came to me. Well, now here's another one where there are ministries that do this. A prison fellowship, Chuck Colson's ministry is about that, visiting prisoners. The Gideons do this. They visit prisoners on a regular basis. So there are ministries that do this. We can support those ministries, but there may be times also when we're called upon to visit a prisoner. And in failing to visit that prisoner, are we failing to visit with Jesus? In the list, there are 3 where there are ministries out there that are devoted to providing food to the hungry, water to the people who don't have pure drinking water, and visiting people in prison. But when it comes to visiting the sick, when it comes to welcoming the stranger, whether in church or on the street, when it comes to things like that, that's in our court. That's us and us alone. Now, when you look at a crowd of people, I don't care what crowd you take. You can take the people in church or you can take them on the street corner, but you look at that. Where's Jesus in the crowd? We don't know, do we? See, Jesus is going to separate the sheep and the goats. How do you know who the sheep are and who the goats are? You don't. I don't. What's the safe thing to do then? Treat them all as goats or treat them all as sheep? It's hard for us to recognize. So what the people said in response to God about this, do these things, as you do these things, you're doing them unto me. These people responded as we would respond, Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you thirsty? When did we see you a stranger? When did we see you in prison? When did we see you sick? When did we see you naked? I don't remember seeing him there. Then his response to remind us that he's with his sheep. And when we ignore that little lamb, we're ignoring him. He says, as you did it unto the least of these, my brothers. Sometimes people want to put a lot of emphasis on the my brothers, believers. And since I'm not really sure he's a believer, I'll just have to ignore him. I don't think that's what he means. We can't tell the sheep from the goats. Sometimes I want to ask God why he allows poverty, because everybody has at some point in time. God, why are you allowing all this poverty, famine, bad water, illness, prison, all this stuff? Why do you do that? When he could do something about it, couldn't he? I mean, he could wipe it all away in a heartbeat. But I'm afraid he might just ask me the same question. Why haven't I done more to help the hungry? Why haven't I done more to provide clean water to people who don't have water? Why haven't I done more to welcome the stranger? Why haven't I done more to clothe the naked? Why haven't I done more to visit the sick? Why haven't I done more to visit the prisoner? That's what he is saying in this with the sheep and the goats. He says, because when you're doing it to the least of these, my brothers, you're doing it unto me. And so I'm passing him by. Every time I pass up an opportunity to do one of these things, I'm passing him by one more time. Now you deal with the goats. Because he tells them, depart from me. After all this time of saying, come unto me, come unto me, come unto me, come unto me, there comes a time when there's no more time left. And it's depart from me. Depart from me into the eternal fire. Now that's not a good departure. But to the goats on the left, that's their fate. That's where it will be, into the eternal fire. They say, well, wait a minute, why? And he says, because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you did not give me water. When I was in prison, you didn't visit me. When I was sick, you didn't visit me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was a stranger, you didn't welcome me. You didn't do those things for me. Go away. And then they say, I didn't see you. If I'd seen you, Jesus, boy, I would have done these things. But for those other goats out there, I wouldn't do it. This is not all new, because in Matthew chapter 16, when Jesus was correcting Peter, he comes back with this, and he says, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be my disciple, you must deny yourself. Because whether you're talking about fasting or doing these things for others, it all boils down to denying yourself first of all. You have to give up this inconveniencing me problem that I have. I have to deny myself to do for somebody else. He says, deny yourself, take up your cross. It means it's not going to be an easy walk. It's going to be a hard walk. And follow me. So if we're going to be his disciples, this is what we have to do. Let me summarize this. When you're sitting around your Thanksgiving table, how are you going to prove your thankfulness? First of all, we are thankful. We are thankful people. You're going to prove your thankfulness by being thankful, first of all, and that's the first step. You have to be thankful of all the things piled upon you, all the blessings on you. Are you thankful for all those blessings? Well, if we're reminded of it and forced to pray about it, then maybe we will be. But be thankful. And once we are thankful, once we have that, know why he has blessed you. Why did he do it? Did he bless you to make you comfortable? Did he bless you because you're such a wonderful person? He wanted you to have everything? He blessed you that he might use you to help others. Because that's how he feeds the hungry, isn't it? He feeds the hungry through people like you and me. He provides water to drink for those people who don't have water to drink through people like you and me. He does all those things through us. Once we recognize that, we know that he has blessed us to do these things for others, we must deny ourselves because we have all this under our control, and the natural thing to do is to spend it on us. Use it for our benefit, for our pleasure, our enjoyment. But he's saying to do it for others, to deny ourselves that, and use it for somebody else. So it is going to require denying ourselves and then performing those works of gratitude. Out of the gratitude for what he has given us, let's use it the way he wants us to use it. And that is for the benefit of others. So we're going to perform those works of gratitude, and through those works of gratitude, we're going to be showing the depth of our love for him and for others. Because you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So if we're going to do that, we're going to do it this way.
I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and his love.